What's up? We are live. Anybody out there? We'll see in a minute. All right. I'm going to wait and see if I can get like 3 people to join us and then I'll proceed. What is up? What is up? What if nobody joins? If nobody joins, then that will be a sign that I just need to hang it up and go to bed, right? What do you think? One person is here. If you'd like to introduce yourself and say hi, you can, but you don't have to. My one viewer right now. Uh-oh, they went away. All right. I mean, I'm technically doing this for myself, so I guess that I could start talking, but oh, there's one person who's back. Did you go away for a while and then you came back? No. So if you'd like to say hi, but no pressure, I'm going to wait for hopefully like 2 more people to join. So it feels like I'm talking to like a small room. Oh, he went away. I keep getting one coming on and then going off. But okay, well, I guess I can talk to myself. I know eventually we'll have a few people. So this is my small channel. And by the way, as you join, let me know if you have issues hearing me. I am going to be speaking softly, but this is a good microphone, so it should pick it up. Oh, we've got one back. So the one keeps appearing and disappearing. So I don't know if that means that there's one of you who just keeps coming in and out. Uh-oh, went away again. That's so funny. Like people, they take about 10 seconds to check out what I'm doing here, and they're like, no. All right, so continuing. This is my small channel, and I never use it for official stuff, and I only use it for this. And so I think I only have like 500 subscribers, maybe not even that many. And so I use this channel for the purpose that I'm about to tell you here in a second. But as I said, I am going to be speaking softly. The microphone should pick it up, but let me know if you can't hear me. Oh, we've got one back again. Are you going to go away? All right. So I have this small, oh, they went away again. I have this small channel, and I use it just for the purpose of what I'm going to be doing here. And that is sometimes when I'm trying to record a video on something, particularly a new topic, or if I'm tired or stressed out or maybe nervous, then it's hard for me to just sit down and record when I'm just talking to myself, because what happens is I'll start like getting hung up on flaws, or I'm not really into it, or I'm nervous. So like I'll do 1 sentence or 2 sentences or maybe 3 sentences, and then I have to stop. And so still 0. I know, but it is really late. And so on a night like that or a day like that, when I feel that way, then usually then what happens is it's almost like a kind of a writer's block, but it's not a writer. I guess you could say performance block, performance anxiety, something like that. And sometimes I just can't get myself psyched up to actually record these. And so that's when I typically will do this kind of an informal live stream to just force myself to get some content out, because you can't overthink it when you're live streaming, and you can't like stop and back up and start again. And so it forces me to get content out, and then I clip that, cut it up, and make a video out of it. Or sometimes it'll be just a great run through. And so I'll end up then being able to sort of push through the block and record a video. So I don't know, 2 people. Oh my God, that's a victory. What's up? I don't know if you're going to stick around or not, but I'm doing basically just an informal run through of some ideas on the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing, because I've been having this like performance block, performance anxiety tonight, especially when I start a new topic like this. And it's almost impossible for me to record a video. And so I do 3 now. So I have this tiny channel, not to repeat everything I just said, but I have this tiny channel, and I use it generally just for this purpose, which is to record rough draft material when I can't I can't do it myself, right? And I keep second guessing it. So it's like when I have an audience, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3, then that gives me the impetus to push through it and to talk, have things to say, really. So let me know if you can't hear me. I am speaking softly because I don't want to wake up my guy upstairs, and also, it's late here and so forth. But if I need to speak, louder, then I can speak. Yeah, louder, more loudly. It is late. Okay, so what's up, 3 people? Hey, Tiggy girl. So if y'all want to join the chat, like I don't have super chats or anything like that, but I will try, especially since there are so few of you, to actually look at your comments and respond to them. But if you're not a member of or subscriber of my big channel, the one that has like 89,000 subscribers, that is where I put almost all of my content. So you need to check that out. It's Colonel Kurtz 99. I think most of you are on the bigger channel, but I'm surprised sometimes that there are people who have found me here, but have not found me elsewhere. So anyway, okay. And thanks for the hello, Tiggy girl. Tiggy girl, can you hear me okay? And even if I speak softer like this, let me know, because again, I'm trying not to wake somebody up. Okay. I am nervous to start a new topic like this, and that's not to imply that this is going to be some big new chapter in my life or in my channel, because as a number of people have pointed out, this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing, it is like rich people problems, so to speak, or first world problems, or whatever the phrasing is. And it's something that definitely doesn't have the significance or the resonance of perhaps Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, or the Manson case, or other cases that I've followed. But that having been said, this is something that I have wanted to talk about or been curious about for months. And I refrained from it, partly because I did think it was not really that important. And secondly, because I just really couldn't make up my mind about it. And a lot of it was gossip, going back to like the initial days of this controversy, when it was just a lot of people gossiping about Blake Lively, or tensions on set, or, oh, they didn't go to the premiere together, or whatever, right? And so I have notes here too that I've got, which I normally don't do. So yeah, so it wasn't something that was on my radar or important, but thank you, Tiggy girl. I will say I had early on some sympathy, and when I say early on, I'm talking about when the original premiere of this movie, It Ends With Us, with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and Baldoni was directing, and Blake Lively was producing, among others, and acting in the film. They both were acting in the film. When the premiere happened, as some of you may know if you follow this, there was a lot of gossip and a lot of rumors in the media about some kind of rift between Lively and Baldoni, or perhaps other members of the cast and Baldoni. And people noticed that that Baldoni and Blake Lively didn't really do any film promotion together. It was separate interviews, not at the premiere together, etc. Right? And so there was this gossip early on. And what happened, some of you may know if you've been following this, is that there was an attitude toward Blake Lively, and I'm talking about months ago again, there was an attitude toward Blake Lively that really it coalesced around the idea that she was this mean girl, quote unquote, and that she was narcissistic, egotistical, kind of shallow Hollywood actress, married to the big movie star, both of them movie stars, and worth millions and millions of dollars and all of that, right? And people, as you know, some of you know, months ago, some people dug up past interviews with Blake Lively, or snippets of interviews, in which, selectively clipping those, she does come across in these clips as someone with a bit of an attitude, or out of touch, or kind of stuck up, or maybe, yes, with a mean girl streak. And I'm not saying that I endorse that. I'm just saying that there were clips that were presented in this way to give you that impression. And I'm not saying that that was necessarily always unfair. I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but there was that one particular interview that Blake Lively and Parker Posey did with, and I can't remember her name, Kirsty something. And anyway, in this interview, Blake Lively was, and some of you have seen this, Blake Lively was pregnant, and very pregnant, very obviously pregnant. And when she sat down, the interviewer said something to her to the effect of, and I'll probably clip it in here, something to the effect of, congratulations on your pregnancy. Or she may have even said it more casually, like, congratulations on your bump or whatever, right? And I'm going to clip it here if you haven't seen it and put it in. I'm talking about when I actually do the recording. This is just a run through. But if you've seen this, then you know what happens is that from that point on, Blake Lively gets this really pretty outrageous bad attitude toward the interviewer. And she makes this comment, oh, well, congratulations on your bump too. And of course, the interviewer is not pregnant. In fact, had gone through a miscarriage. But basically, Lively seemed to be really insulted that reference was made to her pregnancy. And from then on, she was kind of egging on Parker Posey too. The two of them, they were really, I'll show a clip or two, they were really very nasty and, yes, mean to this woman, this interviewer. And they seem to, in particular, really get offended in a feminist way, get offended by certain generalizations they felt that the interviewer was making about them as women, or even in Lively's case, being insulted that her pregnancy was even brought up. So this tells me, even before we get into the stuff with Baldoni, what I get from this interview, and I watched it in its entirety, so we're not talking here about selective clipping, and you can watch it yourself. What I get from this interview is not that Blake Lively is, oh my God, she's just this absolutely horrible person or what have you. What I get from it is that this is, yes, a very entitled, egotistical, spoiled woman who may have a lot of great qualities, but who has been a darling of Hollywood, and her husband, of course, a darling of Hollywood as well, has been at the top of the food chain for now decades, and is very wealthy, and seems to have this kind of she seemed to have this kind of feminist chip on her shoulder, and to take issue or offense with references to her femininity or maternity being brought up in any way, even in a brief congratulatory way. And then there's another moment later in this interview where the interviewer, or it might be a different interview, I can't even remember, but there's a moment, some of you have seen this, where the interviewer compliments Blake Lively on her clothes and compliments the fashions worn in the film, and then asks her about it. What kinds of, something to the effect of, what kinds of dresses did you wear? Or did you like the dresses they made for you, or something to that effect? And Blake Lively gets really snotty about it and rude, and she says something to the effect of, I don't think that you would ask a man that. Would you ask a man that? And the interviewer says, well, actually I would, but taking offense again at being asked this question. So I know I'm rambling, but that's what this is for. And hello, 5 of you. I do appreciate you being here for as long or as briefly as you can, and I'm expecting this will take maybe 45 minutes, but we'll see. This is what I got from the interview. There are a number of women, not only in Hollywood, but just in the corporate world or the business world or what have you, or the intellectual world of academia, for example. I've seen this a lot. There are a number of women who always expect or always believe that whatever situation they go into in a professional sense, they are automatically being, to some degree, judged as women, and that they are already in various degrees kind of impaired by their femininity or by their gender, by being women, in the sense that, oh, it's a sexist world, it's a patriarchal world, and so you got to be on the lookout for that, because it's around every corner. And so something that I think is innocent, seeing that someone is very, very pregnant, and it's something that I think Lively had even announced that she was pregnant. Seeing this woman is very, very pregnant, assuming probably that she's very joyous about this, and also just wanting to make some fucking small talk for this interview. The interviewer says something, congratulations, and then Lively takes offense at that. So this tells me, and then also the clothing thing later on, this tells me that this is someone who has a feminist chip on her shoulder. And there's also something I think going on here too, with the fact that Blake Lively is very beautiful. Probably her entire life she's been beautiful. It's a very sort of vivacious, very blonde kind of beauty, if you know what I mean. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but I'm just saying, like, there's a certain like happy, sun-kissed, California beauty thing going on with her. And that opens a lot of doors and gives that kind of beauty, gives women a lot of opportunities. And I also think that she's a really good actor. But what sometimes happens in these situations is that these women, they start to perceive or believe that they are considered to be just a pretty face, just a hot body, just a pretty face, or even worse, oh, that's the girl who's married to Ryan Reynolds, the Deadpool guy. He's a really big star and stuff. And I know that it seems probably crazy from our perspective as ordinary people, ordinary mortals, to think that a woman like Blake Lively would feel a great deal of insecurity about how she's perceived or what have you. But I think that that's a lot of it. And I think this is someone who probably feels like she's never gotten the tier 1 A-list acting jobs that she'd really like to have. And let's face it, It Ends With Us is a terrible fucking movie. And I will die on that hill, by the way. But we can talk about that in a little while or not. But I think that the best thing that ever happened to that movie is this controversy between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, because otherwise, I just don't know how that movie would have made all of this money. I don't know. No offense to some of you if you liked it. I was just very disappointed. But I'm sure that Blake Lively is not getting quite the kinds of A-list, top-notch, Jessica Chastain roles that she would like to have. And I'm sure that for the decades that she's been in the industry, that she has quite often felt like her deeper qualities, or intellect or whatever, has been overshadowed or even dismissed in favor of her beauty. I think that there are a lot of women, or a number of women with this kind of, in the industry, with this kind of feminist chip on their shoulder about being perceived as non-intellectual or not a top tier actress, or Ryan Reynolds' wife, or, oh, that hot girl from The Shallows, or that hot girl from Gossip Girl, or whatever. And so what I see with Blake Lively, and I know I'm rambling here again, I'm going to cut some of it when I do the recording, but again, it's the whole point. I'm nervous tonight, so I'm wanting to be able to do this where I can kind of stumble over myself and stuff. Anyway, you don't have to stay here. I don't know why I'm even apologizing. It's not like a hostage video. Everyone can leave and I will still keep talking about this bullshit. Oh, and in a minute, I'm going to talk too about why I'm even giving this coverage. But anyway, okay. So I'm spending all this time on this because I just want to tell you the kind of character, and of course, I don't know who she is. I don't really fucking know her, right? But speculatively, the kind of person that I think Blake Lively is, and some of her perhaps weaknesses when it comes to self-esteem or how she feels she's perceived. And so keep that in mind then, that this is the type of person we're talking about, someone who feels like she is not taken seriously enough, who's treated as just a hot thing, is only seen in terms of her sexuality or who she's married to or what have you. And this movie is going to be her opportunity to show that she is a serious creator, that she is a kind of an auteur, to use the pretentious word. And so the fact that she is, a producer on this, and the fact that she evidently took she evidently became such a controlling force in this film, it tells me that she was emotionally invested in this a lot, as like a really serious thing, and she's going to prove herself, and she's going to be taken seriously and all that, right? Again, just speculative, but that's what I think. And so anyway, as you'll remember then, months ago when this movie premiered, when this terrible movie premiered, there was all of this gossip, and then there was this idea that sort of coalesced online among different people that Blake Lively was a mean girl, and then, picking out different interview moments that made her look bad. Now, I will say I felt, and I continue to feel, that was unfair, that Blake Lively was treated unfairly by a lot of her critics in social media and so forth. I know I just spent all this time talking about how she was rude in an interview, but a lot of celebrities have moments when they're rude, or when they get tired of the endless parade of media press interviews that they have to do, which they all hate, apparently. And it's drudgery. I know, play the small violin for the movie stars, but every job is hard work when it comes down to it, and especially at the A-list level. And so they're doing a lot of shit they don't want to do. They get tired. I get it, right? I mean, I've been there to some small degree with things in my life that I have to do. And so there was a part of me that felt like, okay, that it really was getting into bullying. I'm not talking about Justin Baldoni or any one person. I'm talking about just the general attitude of social media and the things that a lot of people were saying and putting out there about Blake Lively that I thought was just really, really excessive and probably not accurate and so forth. Although now I don't know, I've changed my opinion, but probably not accurate. And so I was actually sympathetic to Blake Lively to some degree early on when I felt like this feeding frenzy had gotten out of control. And I mean, I still think that wasn't right. But that is social media, and sometimes things take on a life of their own, and so forth, right? So let me fast forward to where we are. What was it a week ago? Wait a second. Oh, and let me say one. Well, oh wait, okay. Oh, and let me check comments really quick. It's just Tidy Girl. Tidy Girl, thank you. Said it sucks. She's talking about the movie. And then thank you, the presenter's name. I'll have to look up how she pronounces it. But Kirsty Flaw, she was she Australian? I'm trying to remember. Okay. So by the way, to the 7 of you who have joined, I am just going to be talking about doing this run through of the Blake Lively Baldoni controversy. So if that doesn't sound good to you, you certainly don't have to stick around. But anyway, just a run through late night. I don't know if you'll find it amusing or not. I'm trying to get this comment off the screen now. Sorry. Okay. So a week or so ago, Blake Lively, with her attorney, through her attorney, she filed a complaint. It was not a lawsuit at that point, but it was an official complaint with the government, state of California, and it was some particular bureau that had jurisdiction over business practices, or no, it was civil rights. And I should know this, but I'm just going to skip over it. Maybe it was California, like Civil Rights Commission or what have you. But basically, she filed this public complaint, or this complaint that was made public, and in it alleging that basically she was harassed and exposed to a toxic work environment on and off the set of It Ends With Us, and that her primary harasser was Justin Baldoni. And she was also complaining about the studio that I believe he owns with a billionaire friend of his, or I don't know. Again, I'm probably going to cut this out, but the studio that Justin Baldoni was, I believe, a founder of, and certainly central to. She also complained about that studio, Wayfair Studios, and Jamie Heath, Baldoni's friend, who I believe is the president of that, and so forth. And so she had this list of complaints that she ticked through in this document, and she alleged a number of unsavory or unseemly or inappropriate behaviors by Justin Baldoni and by others that I've just named, but primarily Justin Baldoni. And so I'm going to take just a little mini break here to get some more of what I'm drinking. It's nothing exciting, but I take a mini break. It won't be long. Let's say like 5 minutes. And then when I come back, I want to go through, not line by line. I won't have time for that tonight, although I may do that if people want it later some other time. But I'm going to go through her main complaints. And I'm going to talk about why I did not feel the lawsuit, why I had concerns about her complaint even at the time, but I really had mixed feelings. And also I was very turned off by Justin Baldoni. So that's what I want to talk about in the next segment. I'll talk about Blake Lively's grievances as laid out in that document. I'll talk about my thoughts at the time and why I was really turned off by Justin Baldoni. And a feeling that has not entirely gone away either, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But anyway, 5 minutes. If you want to stick around, great. If not, no problem. But I will be back. All right. I'm wondering if I want to kind of dim it a little. I just hate that overhead light. But anyway. So, 6 people here. What is up? I am talking for the next, realistically, probably 40 minutes about the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively situation. And this is just a run through for me to get some ideas out because I'm having terrible, terrible performance block today, performance anxiety. And it's not like really writer's block because I don't normally do this, but I actually made a lot of notes. But I don't know. Who knows? Just some days it's just not there. And people would be surprised, who see me in my videos looking so confident, right? People would be surprised at how often I do have really severe performance anxiety to the point where there are days where I want to do a video and I have it all planned and everything. And I just cannot make myself get started, right? So I don't know if that's a consolation to anyone else who has some stage fright or performance anxiety or whatever, but I definitely feel that a lot. So in this case, I might have just waited another day or so and tried again, tomorrow when I get up. But I want to, make hay while what's the saying? But anyway, you know what I'm saying. I really want to hit while the iron is hot again. I'm getting so mixed up my metaphors. But anyway, because this is really like getting a lot of views and clicks, and I'm amazed at how much engagement, this is a sideline, I guess, but how much engagement on Twitter X those of us who are covering this are getting. Typically for me on Twitter, a decent post or a post that gets decent views is going to get 5,000 views on Twitter. And a really great post or one that goes viral or really takes off for me typically will be something like 30, 40,000. But that's really unusual. It's really, really high. I put out tweets on this Baldoni lawsuit, and within 6 hours, one of them has hit almost 1 million views. Now, that's not literally 1 million people just devouring what I'm saying, but it means that it's being pushed to and passed on a lot of people, passed on to a lot of people on Twitter. So that's interesting. And so you might ask, well, is that the reason that you're covering this now? Well, I mean, I guess you could say partly in the sense that I want to choose topics that I'm interested in, but also that people are interested in. And I don't even know if it's going to hit with my audience because it's quite possible, even though I'm getting a lot of hits on Twitter, that when I put out this video, a lot of people might say, well, so what, or this is dumb, or who cares, or whatever, right? So it's totally okay. And I'll probably continue to cover it a bit, but it's not going to be like a big pillar for me. But I think it is interesting. And I'll tell you, I'm getting there. I'll tell you why I think this is an important situation and finally worthy of coverage. But let's talk about several things first. When Blake Lively filed this complaint with the state of California and she alleged various things, okay, I'll talk about what she alleged in a moment, but I will say that this is when I really started looking into Justin Baldoni. Not in the sense that I spent, like hours or whatever watching all of his videos or podcast episodes or what have you, but like a number of you, when you look up someone, if you spend an hour or so scrolling through different interviews and watching different interview clips and stuff, you get some sense of how you feel about that person, how they come across, even if it's not always accurate, right? And so immediately, when I click on these images, when I Googled Baldoni, and I clicked on these, or I Googled him, and the first image I see is him with that man bun. And I know this is probably really biased of me and stupid, but I do have a real dislike for the man bun. It's come to seem very pretentious. And it's a way, and I know a number of you get this, right? Because people make fun of the man bun, but it's a way for some people to signal a certain like rugged sensitivity, like, oh yeah, I'm a rugged, handsome guy. But at the same time, I've got this man bun and I'm really like feminist and hip and all of that, right? And I can talk about intersectional feminism or, gender inequality or et cetera, et cetera. And look, this may describe some of you who watch this video. I'm not trying to tear you down, your views or how you present yourself. But I just have a certain distaste for that. And I actually made a snide comment even online, even to that effect, when when all this started happening, like a week or so ago, about something to the effect of hard to trust a guy who presents himself this way. And it wasn't just the man bun, but apparently one of Baldoni, or is one of his main interests, or I should say his main creative interest over the years, seems to have been this focus on, as he titles it in his book, undoing my masculinity, I believe. And so he has done like TED Talks. He has a podcast, or used to. His co-host quit on him, but he had a podcast, and he would talk about feminism and masculinity, and very sort of woke, very sort of modern, right? And I don't want to even get into the value or lack of value for all of that, but I'm just trying to, with a shorthand here, tell you how he comes across if you Google him online. And so while this might appeal to some people, to me, it was very much a turnoff. And I tend to mistrust men who present themselves in this way. And maybe I shouldn't, but maybe it's prejudice in me in some way. But I tend to distrust men who present themselves in this way. And some friends of mine on Twitter X, even Mary, or particularly, I should say, Mary at Tim Pool's organization, Mary from Pop Culture Crisis, she posted something to the effect of a man presenting himself as this kind of woke feminist is a red flag, a walking red flag, something like that. And so that was my perception of him, that he laid it on way too thick in his interviews. And I felt like the feminism thing was really just kind of a stupid shtick of his. And that this was someone who was probably narcissistic and very fake and disingenuous in this. And again, that's not from an extensive, thorough look at him, but this is just from sort of brief, cursory investigation online. But I did not feel qualified, other than making a couple of jokes on Twitter. I did not feel qualified in any way to judge or diagnose this situation, because Blake Lively's allegations, I think that even at the time, I felt like there was something kind of suspect about the way that she seemed to be intentionally framing certain things. And it left it open to me. It read to me the document as a very highly subjective document that was definitely, like a lot of legal documents, that was definitely trying to push things hard in one direction, and was maybe making some leaps of logic that were not warranted necessarily. So let me give you some examples. She claimed in her complaint that Baldoni would barge in when she was breastfeeding her child in her trailer, and would barge in and to talk about the film or whatever, and that there seemed to be a lack of respect for that kind of boundary and that privacy. She claimed that when they were doing intimacy scenes, sex scenes, that at times he would go off script, so to speak. And at one point she claims when they were doing like a makeout scene or a sexual scene, he bit her lightly on the ear and even mumbled something, "Oh, smells so good," something to that effect, that she claimed was completely unwarranted for that situation, and that therefore was a kind of a sexual harassment and an invasion of her boundaries. She claimed that Baldoni and his best friend, the president of Wayfarer Studios, Jamie Heath, he claimed that he showed Blake Lively a video of his wife giving birth. I think it was like a home birth, a natural birth, and he showed her a video of it. And Blake Lively's complaint presented this as a kind of sexual harassment, that she was being forced to watch this naked woman doing sexual stuff with her body. And so I thought, even at the time, that seemed a little suspect, because I've never known anyone to show a video of a woman giving birth, much less their wife giving birth, and to do so in a sexual way. I mean, I guess someone could have like a pregnancy fetish or a childbirth fetish, but I don't know you'd be sharing that with Blake Lively at work. Like, it just seemed to me, not even hearing the other side of things, that she was taking certain situations that really sounded like they probably were more innocent, not all of them, but certain situations like that, and really trying to get some leverage out of it in twisting it or depicting it in a certain way. And so that was, there were aspects of the lawsuit, there were aspects of her complaint even then that bothered me, but I didn't know what to make of it. And look, it's certainly within the realm of possibility to have an asshole, sexist, sexually harassing guy running a film. I mean, history is replete with directors who severely sexually harassed at times their leading ladies. Think of Alfred Hitchcock and the woman in The Birds, Tippi Hedren in The Birds, and the other movie, Marnie, right? Um, you know, Severely sexually harassed in a lot of ways, and many other examples. So it's not like, I couldn't accept this or anything. And in fact, I was leaning toward the idea probably that Baldoni was what we might call, quote unquote, a creep and a narcissist and an asshole. And that Blake Lively, had been really hypersensitive to that, probably because of the things that I've just said earlier about her seeming to have a kind of feminist chip on her shoulder, and a kind of a chip on her shoulder about not being taken, seriously as a woman, and for her intellect and all of that. Again, just I'm reading into stuff, and so I could see where you'd have these two personalities that would certainly clash and not gel. But I wasn't sure to what extent Baldoni had been inappropriate or even wrong in his conduct, and to what extent certain things were being miscast or misinterpreted. So that's where I was at. I hated the movie at that point. I was completely turned off by Baldoni and his, macho / feminist shtick with the man bun and all that. He seemed to alternate between doing the man bun and doing the Jesus look. Although I will say that for this film with Blake Lively, he went for a more conventional hairstyle. But anyway, and I never watched Jane the Virgin. I'm sorry, no offense to those of you who are fans of that show. So I don't have that to draw upon, the experience of watching him in that. But I was turned off by Baldoni. And yet at the same time, and I was open to the idea that he might have crossed the line and was a shitty director, or even to some extent was consciously or unconsciously kind of harassing Blake or some of the women on set. But I also had big problems with a number of things, like I said, in Lively's lawsuit that to me seemed miscast. And so I just didn't know, right? And so that's why I didn't really say anything about it and didn't do a video. Some of you, people in my audience, were asking me to talk about this because they were interested in it, and it was something that was getting a lot of views, or starting to get a lot of views and clicks. And it seemed like something kind of a Me Too scandal that is in my wheelhouse, right? And so, but I resisted that and didn't want to, because I didn't have an opinion at that point. I felt like I had some feelings, some ideas, but I didn't really know. So I want to give a shout out briefly, though, to someone who did smell a rat and was vocal about that early on. And if you haven't checked out the work of Ariadne Jacob, she has been just dynamite on this. And she was the first person that I saw after Blake Lively, because what happened is this: once Blake Lively filed this complaint and it became public, everybody lined up to support her. Seriously. Justin Baldoni's own co-host, this woman that for years would sit there, presumably with him, or you can go online and watch it and talk about feminism and hear him tell these, all these stories about helping his wife with this or that, and the wife would come on, whatever. But she quit on him and put out a statement. Then you had all of multiple cast members lining up behind Blake Lively, and then you had even people like Gwyneth Paltrow showing their support in various ways, because Blake Lively claimed in her complaint that her newly launched hair care product line, Blake Brown, had suffered basically a financial collapse, or a collapse in sales, due to all of the gossip and all of the stories surrounding her, or the shitty things that people were saying, the criticism. She claimed that. I don't know how you verify that, but she claimed in the lawsuit. And so you had, there was Gwyneth Paltrow, who was then promoting Blake Lively's products, Blake Brown and so forth. And so, and then you even had major studios coming out in support of her. Justin Baldoni got dropped by his agent, right? The agency representing him. He was disinvited from some appearances, and was also had an award rescinded that he had recently won for being, I think, such a supposedly sensitive artist, and they took the award back, basically. So you had everybody basically lining up behind Blake Lively, and really the only person I saw who was saying, hey, hold on, guys, let's take another look at this, or let's wait until more information comes out, was Ariadne Jacob. And I think that that's partly because, she's a very smart cookie, but also because she went through her own ordeal with the New York Times and even sued the New York Times and sued Taylor Lorenz, everyone's favorite pseudo journalist, for defamation, because the New York Times wrote up, and this is a whole detour, and don't have time to get into it. You can look into it yourself or check out our channel or what have you. But the New York Times wrote a false defamatory piece about Ari's business and completely destroyed her business. And she was for a while completely canceled and lost, I think everything financially. And so she sued them for defamation and ended up having to, I believe, settle out of court, just because, as you know, it's almost impossible to successfully sue, particularly sue a media outlet for defamation. And so, she was satisfied, I think, that like some other people who have filed lawsuits that I've covered, that she was able to at least tell her story in the media. And she went on Fox News and she went on CNN and different places and has talked about it. But anyway, so Ari was very sensitive as a savvy media person and also someone who had been canceled by the New York Times. And by lies, she was very sensitive to the fact that in Hollywood, as she puts it, it's very common to have creative differences. It's very common to have power struggles, particularly when you've got big egos. There's all kinds of drama that happens in business in Hollywood, and particularly when it comes to films and on film sets and who's at the helm and everything. And the point that she was trying to make is that it seemed to her that the real problem here was that, and not this other perspective, not the things that Blake Lively was alleging. And again, it was just a hunch on Ari's part, a little more than a hunch. She had some reasoning. You should check it out. But she was basically saying, hold on, let's see if there's another side of the story, because this just seems in various ways kind of sus. And she turned out to be right. So kudos to her, props to her. And so I didn't know what to think, but I was kind of just keeping my eye on things, right? And so that gets us then up to what happened in the last 24 hours, right, is that Justin Baldoni filed a lawsuit against the New York Times. He's suing the New York Times for $250 million. And he also names Blake Lively in the complaint, also brings up Ryan Reynolds as well, but and some various other entities. And so he's suing, and also his publicist or former publicist are also suing the New York Times as well, and Wayfarer Studios is suing. And so this is sending a powerful message, regardless of whether the suit has merit or not. It's sending a powerful message here that they are not going to take this lying down, and that Baldoni believes that he has a credible counter story or counter argument or a view of things that's very, very different from what Blake Lively's team has presented. And so what I want to do when I come back, I'm going to take a little break, but what I want to do is, I think I'm going to change the lighting in here too, because I'm getting tired of the overhead. But what I want to do is talk about the main points, I think, of Baldoni's lawsuit and what's really shocking to me, particularly some of the things he alleges about the New York Times and the way the New York Times and Blake Lively, he alleges colluded to misrepresent text messages to make it seem the opposite of how they were actually intended. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to go through his major complaints and how his lawsuit has really just completely deflated Blake Lively's complaint and her allegations. And I understand that there are a number of people who are saying, well, okay, now the ball is back in Blake Lively's court, and so let's hear what she has to say. Yes, I certainly want to hear what she has to say. And in fact, I did read the lawsuit now that she filed recently, just today. Yes, I do want to hear what more she has to say. But looking at Blake Lively's claims and the way that she presented them in that initial complaint and the lawsuit even now, and looking at Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, it's just obvious that one of them has way more credibility. And there is no way, I believe, that the New York Times or Blake Lively can successfully answer at least several of the things that are not only alleged, but that evidence is provided for by Justin Baldoni's complaint. So yeah, I get this mutually toxic and all of that and big egos, and it's not really him or her, it's both of them that are the problem, and blah, blah, blah. And that's what I was feeling earlier. But no, Justin Baldoni, I still don't find him appealing. I still think that the feminist shtick of his is really stupid. I still hate the man bun and all of that stuff. But I will say this. I do think that he is the wronged party in this and how things have developed. And I think that Blake Lively and her lawyers, they made a terrible strategic mistake. And let's go on that cliffhanger. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the terrible strategic mistake that Blake Lively and her lawyers have made. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. Those of you who want to stick around, up to 19 now. When I come back, we will talk. All right. Whoa, that's pretty red though, isn't it? I was not going for that effect. You like the red? The red look. I don't know. I think I can brighten it up in my rudimentary post-production. So I'm going to leave it just because it's late and I don't like that. I need to work on my lighting because I don't like that overhead lighting, the fluorescence. I think that it's been shown in scientific studies that when people are exposed to that kind of harsh light, that it has really a very inhibitory psychological effect. And I think they've actually shown that with pregnant women too, like that the old time hospital lighting that wasn't dim was really bright, right? Had an inhibitory effect on women giving birth. And so I think now that birthing clinics and even a number of hospitals have moved to dimmer lighting, right, during the delivery process. Anyway, way off topic, but thanks for joining. And hello to AJ, who is, oh, where did your comment go? There we go. AJ is one of my mods and not really anything to do tonight, but welcome here and feel free to do anything you want to do on this channel that you would normally do, AJ. But yeah, he's a mod on my bigger channel. And if you're not aware of it, check it out. Okay, so let me get to the point and try to get through this faster than I have been. I want to tell you one more reason, by the way, that, oh, wait a second, sorry. I want to tell you one more reason that I thought that Blake Lively's allegations were suspicious. And that is because I have some experience doing the stuff that I've been doing, observing crisis PR and Hollywood crisis PR. And we've seen it used very effectively at times and not used effectively at others, or not used enough, or maybe too much, or whatever, right? But those of us who have been paying attention to these celebrity cases, not just the Me Too stuff, but all kinds of stuff, all kinds of shit that celebrities get involved in or get themselves into. And I feel like I have a pretty good idea of the capabilities, but also the limits of Hollywood PR and crisis PR. And you can, after a while, you really can spot what is happening organically versus something that someone or an agency is making an attempt to plant in some way in the public mind. And the influence, I just say this, my view of things, what I've seen, the influence and the capabilities that these people have, these crisis PR people, are way, way, way lower than what people think that they're like. It's not like some Ray Donovan situation or whatever. From what I understand and what I've read about it and heard, it's a lot of mundane things like trying to change what comes up when someone does a Google search of you. And at the very most, you know, if some of these crisis people have contacts with writers in the media or the Daily Mail or whatever, the most that they can do is say, hey, this is an interesting story. Are you interested in covering this? And most of the time they get shot down. So this also, Blake Lively's allegations, they didn't, sorry, I should say this, Blake Lively's allegations in her complaint that she had been retaliated against by Justin Baldoni, and that Justin Baldoni's PR people were the source of all of this gossip about Blake Lively and all of these criticisms, and people doing these videos like I talked about where they clip out the worst moments that she's had or stupid tacky things that she said or what have you. She claimed, Blake Lively, in her complaint in this document, she also claimed, and this was a big part of her allegations, she claimed that Justin Baldoni hired these PR assassins, so to speak, and these women who would just flood the zone. And this is what Amber Heard too alleges about Johnny Depp, right? These agents of Justin Baldoni would just flood the zone with all of these negative comments and negative stories and bots and planting stories, and just basically create from out of nowhere, again, this is Blake Lively's narrative, that basically from out of nowhere, these PR assassins of Justin Baldoni created and fed and nurtured and grew this horrible, horrible impression about Blake Lively that so many were presented with online. And I just felt, honestly, that this kind of an operation, so to speak, would be above the capabilities of even the best PR person. To me, having paid attention, as a number of you did, having paid attention to what was being said about Blake Lively in recent months, And having paid attention to some of these stories and these videos and what have you, it felt to me very organic. Now, it didn't mean it felt right. And as I said, I thought that it was generally unfair, and that the piling on Blake Lively at that point, especially just based on mere gossip and some snippets of interviews, that it just wasn't right. It wasn't. Yeah, I didn't support it. It kind of made me feel a little icky, honestly. And so at that point, I'll tell you, I was sympathetic to her in those months. But all of that did not come from Justin Baldoni, and it did not come from his PR agents. And I just felt, even then, what I thought when I read Blake Lively's complaint, and what I said to people around me was, my God, who knew that there were PR people who were this good, man, because that was just a brilliant campaign, if so, right? But then after I sat with it for more than 5 minutes and thought about it, I really came to the conclusion that a number of these claims that Blake Lively made in her complaint had to have been at least inflated, because what she was alleging, I just didn't think was possible, unless someone really was some kind of a PR wizard. And I know that Amber Heard alleges the same thing, and she and Alexi Mostros like to bring Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, into it too, and make their wild allegations. And he's talking to fucking CIA agents in their grandmother's basement or whatever. I skipped over the best part. Say it again. Talking to CIA agents in their grandmother's fucking basement or whatever. But, what else is Amber Heard going to say? Is she going to say, oh, this is true, and people just feel this way about me because that's how they feel about me, and not as the result of some horrific campaign by Johnny Depp and Mohammed bin Salman? No, she's not going to say that. And so this is what happened. And here I arrive at what I teased earlier. Blake Lively's tremendous, terrible strategic mistake, or the terrible strategic mistake made by Blake Lively and her lawyers. Blake Lively, you could argue, was the victim of a sort of mob mentality months ago on social media, and a sort of widespread, I guess you could say, you can use the term bullying if you want. And I do think that some of what people were doing was going over the line, and it got a bit silly. But let me put it this way: that is and should be understood to be just the downside of being a major celebrity these days. And everybody has their time in the barrel. If you look at the biographies of any of the big celebrities, you will see that all of them at some point have had a scandal. They've had something super embarrassing. I mean, even like people that you see as being like just nice and funny and benign. Like, I mean, how many of you remember that Owen Wilson tried to kill himself? And I hope he's feeling better, right? I'm not making light of that, but I'm just saying, like, actually, like, if you dig into the background of modern celebrities, you're going to see that everybody had their time in the barrel, so to speak, where they were the object of gossip and lies or ridicule or, oh my God, or what have you. And I'm not saying that that makes it okay, but I'm saying that what happened with Blake Lively, I really think it would have blown over. I understand that she claims in those documents that her hair care line was suffering or what have you, but that movie made like $500 million, as it turns out. I don't know that much. It made hundreds of millions. It was like one of the biggest financial successes of the last year. And it's a terrible movie. So they pulled off a fucking coup to get that thing to rack up that much money. And again, I'm not unconvinced, or let me put it this way. I'm not convinced. I just blew it. It's too late. And again, I'm not convinced that this whole thing isn't some psyop that Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni are involved in here, because the more that they get in the mud with each other and these allegations and dueling lawsuits and claims and what have you, the more interest goes to that stupid fucking movie. Anyway, I digress. So let me see. Let me make sure there's nothing else I want to say. So here's the mistake that she made. She wanted to, in some way, fix her image problem, or she wanted to, in some way, rectify what I'm sure was a very painful period of several months of having people talk in a very strongly negative way about you and ridiculing you and what have you on the internet, and taking snippets of interviews, or in some cases, a little more than a snippet, right? But anyway, snippets of interviews and all this, and putting you through the social media ringer. And I understand that has to be really, really hard. But what happened was she felt, I'm sure, and maybe her lawyers or PR people did, that she needed to have a target, and so that she could be seen fully as a victim in this and have a bad guy and basically shift the blame from herself to someone else, right? And when I say blame, I just mean blame for the negative impression that she had at that point in the public mind, that again, I think was unfair. But also, yeah, that happens. And I really think if she had just let it blow over, there already were a number of people that were hip to the fact that this whole mean girl narrative had gone too far. It was stupid or silly or whatever. And a lot of people who didn't even care. And a lot of people who went to the fucking movie and made you millions of dollars, Blake Lively, because even through all of this supposed trauma of being on this set where the director and others were not hip to your code of how things should be going, and again, no one has proven the more serious allegations that she made about various harassing or various aspects or elements of sexual harassment on the set. Although Baldoni in his lawsuit has refuted several things. We'll talk about that. But this whole trauma that you claim that you went through, Blake, that even affected your children, you claim it was traumatic for your children and everything, you know, I don't know why you're going home and telling your kids that you're being sexually harassed. But anyway, but this whole trauma and everything, there was sympathy, I think, for you that the narrative had gone too far, and you had made so much money that I think if you had just let it blow over, Blake, then you would have found your reputation restored. People have short memories. They were going to get over the Mean Girls thing and whatever, and people were going to be talking about what a huge success your movie is, and you were a producer on it. So I know that that movie is making hundreds of fucking dollars, that you have to be rolling it in. So whatever you were not making from the Blake Brown hair care products, I just cannot believe, I refuse to believe that that was not outweighed by all of the unexpected money that you were making from this movie. And again, I think it may be a psyop, but anyway, money that you were making from this movie. So then why couldn't you have just like accepted that, wow, I'm one of the most successful producers and actresses of the year based on these numbers, and it's a huge sleeper hit, a huge surprise hit, and all of this, and people are seeing me in a serious role, even though it's a stupid movie, but a serious role. Taking that as a win, you know, take the gossip, deal with it, you know, for a few months or what have you. It's dying down. And then move on and bask in your success and the next iteration of things. But she couldn't do that. And the reason that she couldn't do that, partly, I believe, is because of what I was talking about earlier, that you have a massive ego, and I'm sure, and two massive egos. We're talking about, I think, Baldoni, but you have with Blake a massive ego. And I'm not saying she's a bad person or anything like that, or an Amber Heard. I'm just saying you do have someone with a massive ego who I think has a chip on her shoulder about things, and maybe an inability to put things in some perspective, as I just have. And so she wanted to fight, and she needed a villain. She needed to make an example of someone. And I'm not talking about in some super nefarious conscious way, maybe unconsciously, or her lawyers or PR people are advising her, or she's just fucking pissed off at Baldoni because it seems like they just really grated on each other. And particularly he seemed to have really grated on her. To what extent he was doing inappropriate bad stuff or not, that's very clear. But she had anger to express, or she thought this was her route to vindication. And so the strategic mistake that I believe she's made is that she has turned herself now into the aggressor, and she has turned Baldoni is given him the victim status. And what I mean by that is this: social media and the public at large, and a lot of these gossip columnists or, you know, online personalities or whatever, they were unfair, I think, at times to Blake Lively, you know, months ago. But that had nothing to do, as it turned out, it really didn't, with Justin Baldoni, I think. And I think that his lawsuit is very persuasive in establishing that. That was just a completely, it seems, organic thing that built up a narrative that built up around Blake Lively. And you have to admit, Blake, that you did have some really shitty, like, what the fuck moments in some of these interviews. And you did come across as, in the entirety of that particular interview, the bump interview, you did come across as someone, to me, who has a massive chip on your shoulder and is out of touch with, like, real life problems. To get so unsettled by someone referring to a baby bump and asking you about some clothes. Did you like wearing the pretty clothes that they made for you? Oh my God. Oh my God. It's like almost like having to go through Auschwitz or something. I understand. So she couldn't do it. She needed a target. Maybe she was pissed off at Baldoni, and probably in her mind, construes. I think that her lawsuit was justified, and she's striking a blow for feminism and for women. And now I'm going to be on the front lines of changing the toxic work environment in Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. These things that people tell themselves, particularly actors and actresses, movie stars at times, who feel a sense of inner vacuity and superficiality, and they feel a need to like do something. And I think that's the kind of feminist that Blake Lively sees herself as being. So all that is to say, well, let's talk about Baldoni's complaints, actually. Oh, no, all that's to say that was her big strategic mistake, is I think that now she's put him in the sympathetic position, in that it now appears, based on what he has claimed in his lawsuit, that and things that he seems to have verified, that it's actually Blake Lively's side that sought throughout the film, the production of the film, and afterward, to maintain a real control over the film, the narrative, and to take a hostile position, a hostile stance relative to Baldoni. But the main thing that I think that she's done here that's problematic is she has, in her allegations and in the way that the New York Times that she colluded with has chosen to present them, she has made some significant errors here in judgment and in presentation that I think just takes away any credibility that she might have, because it's hard when you look at the errors in the presentation here, of the way that she and the New York Times presented this case against Baldoni. There are some huge red flags. So the main one, and this is the most shocking allegation, I think, jaw-dropping allegation, and I talked about it on Twitter, that Baldoni has now made in his lawsuit against the New York Times, in which he names Blake Lively, is that a conversation between his PR people, two women representing him or working for him in a PR sense, when all of this was going down initially, and there was tension on the set and behind the scenes, and also gossip and so forth. There's a conversation, and I know it's blurry the way I presented it online, so I'm going to try to get a clear version of the conversation and actually put it in here so you can see that. It shouldn't be that hard to do. But there's a conversation that in Blake Lively's complaint and in its presentation in the New York Times article, there's a conversation that indicates that these two PR people accept responsibility for the bad PR that Blake Lively was getting. In other words, there's a conversation that seems to show, and I'll have to splice it in here, but there's a conversation that seems to show these two women working for Baldoni saying, "Oh, great job, and this, and that's why I'm the best," because they're talking about like all of this public hate for Blake all this public hate for Blake Lively at the time, and all of this criticism and so forth, and they seem to be saying, "Wow, we did this," or "Congratulations," and then one of them is saying, "Well, that's why I'm the best." Now, that's how it's presented, and very incriminating in a way, right? Not that I think that there's anything shocking about it, because I expect that the Hollywood world of PR would be very cutthroat. And again, I think the thing that people would be surprised at is how actually often ineffective and impotent these PR people are, metaphorically, professionally. But that's the way it was presented in this. Very nefarious, very hyper manipulative, almost like you can imagine like Dr. Evil, like, whoa. Now, Baldoni has presented another version of these texts, and here's what's important about it, okay? As you may or may not know, there are two main ways of extracting text. Like if you're giving someone a subpoena, or someone's turning over their phone and their records to you, there are basically sort of two ways that you can extract those, or that you can also present that information to the viewer. One of them is to extract the actual data, like the actual message that was transmitted from phone to phone, and then to make a typed readout, or a typed a retyping of that, but not with anything sort of extra around it. And well, I'm going to say this again. The way that it's presented is how we saw
a lot of the evidence in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, if you'll remember that, or even the leaked, I should say leaked, or the released text after the trial with Johnny Depp's conversations with various people, the way that was presented, right? And that was the data actually being extracted and then retyped. Now, the other way of doing this or presenting it is just to actually have what is more or less a kind of a screenshot of the actual conversation. And that's going to include things like emojis and stuff like that, right? And also you get more of a sense of like the way the conversation is moving and flowing. You know what I'm saying? So here's where Baldoni, he presented the same conversation, but in the other way that I'm describing here. And you might say, oh, well, maybe he's faking it or whatever. No, I mean, there are ways that you can do this and present this and still have it be verified. And, you know, as this lawsuit proceeds, Blake Lively's side is certainly welcome to challenge the validity of anything. But no, I really do think that they're authentic. But he shows the conversation as it actually happened in the phone. And I think that, I guess this is the conversation between his two PR reps, and maybe he was also on it. I'm going to have to look back and splice it in here, but maybe Baldoni was also in the conversation. But at any rate, so he gives this presentation here. And this is what's strikingly different. There are several things that were pointed out in his lawsuit that I think are just really damning. One is that the exterior content, the surrounding content of this conversation is not only left out in Lively in the New York Times presentation, but just entirely ignored. And if you look at the context around those immediate snippets of, yeah, that's why I'm the best and congratulations and good job, what you find, now listen, if you haven't heard this, I just think this is fucking like crazy and jaw-dropping. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but to me, this is, people say, oh, this is not a big deal. It's just, you know, first class, you know, celebrity bullshit and egos and stuff. Well, yeah, I do think there's a lot of that, but there's also the New York Times not only messing up a story, but deliberately, completely 180-degree misrepresenting what was actually going on in these super important, supposedly incriminating texts. This is what, according to Baldoni, and I think it's legit, what's actually going on is there's a whole context immediately around these few lines in which they talk about the fact that they're not doing this. It wasn't them, that it is organic. And they even basically say to each other, like, we really haven't done anything. And wow, aren't we lucky? And isn't it lucky that people just feel this way and that this has just come together and all of this? But like, there's a whole context where then they start making then a joke almost out of this idea that they're doing anything. And so what you see is that those texts where she goes, congratulations or great job, or that's what I'm paid for, they were jokes. And you know how we also know that they were jokes is because there were emojis. There were emojis that were in the original messages that were left out, how conveniently left out of the official data extraction that was presented in Blake Lively and the New York Times' version. So you had emojis which connote sarcasm used when these ladies were saying this stuff. Congratulations, good job. Oh yeah, that's why I'm the best. And then these faces connoting that it was an absolute bullshit, you know, satirical statement. Completely the opposite. And they left the emojis out, right? And they also changed the order. They literally changed, and Baldoni shows this in his suit, so it will be verified. But he alleges and shows us a representation of what he claims is the original conversation, and the order of certain lines have been changed in a way that makes things look worse. Baldoni's conversation is a complete 180-degree from the way that it's presented. So it's a complete 180-degree from the way that it is. One more time. It's a complete 180-degree deviation from the way that it was presented originally by Blake Lively in the New York Times. So someone is fucking lying. And Baldoni does not strike me as someone, you know, who would sue the New York Times and his lawyers and that company, who would sue the New York Times for defamation and show up with bullshit texts and stuff. Like I really, the suspicion that I felt and the kind of, this is suspect, this doesn't make sense really about Blake Lively's complaint, but I didn't know. This feels so much more credible. And you might say, oh, feels. Well, no, I'm just telling you, he comes with a lot of receipts in this. And all of this will have to be sifted through. And I understand that she might have counter arguments or what have you, but this was a really big, possibly damning blow to Blake Lively's case and her image, in the sense that, I mean, if she had haters before, if she had people who thought she was a mean girl or manipulative or conniving or out of touch bitch, I'm not calling her that. I'm just saying, though, that is the image that I know, Blake Lively, you had to suffer with for months and months and months with all this bad media. And you should have let it blow over, and you should have taken all the money and all the prestige that this film's success was going to give you, and you should have moved on. But now you've gotten yourself stuck in the muck and mired in this thing that's going to make you look really bad, and it's going to give all of those people who were already saying bad shit about you and deriding you and even maligning you, there so much more ammunition. And it's not just that one thing either with the text, okay? There are a number of other allegations made by Blake Lively that Baldoni has almost 180-degree different version of. For instance, Blake Lively in her complaint talked about the fact that there was such an insensitivity on the part of Baldoni and Jamie Heath and others that they would basically barge in to her trailer where she was breastfeeding her kid, barge in unannounced, or even over, I think, her protest to a degree, she said, or her discomfort. And yet Baldoni has a record of a conversation, a text, where she says to him in very casual, completely comfortable language, almost exhibitionary language, I would say, something I'm just over here. What was the term that she used, actually? Because, hold on a second, I do need to find it, because this actually is important to what's being said. And I'm going to look at your comments in a minute, but I just want to have a record of this. Let's see, where is it? Okay, here we go. So she says, this is from People magazine. However, Baldoni's complaint shows alleged text messages from Lively that read, quote, "I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines," unquote. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say they're a salacious way. She's just very casual, right? So nothing I should say exhibitionist about it, but very casual in the language. And he says, "Copy, editing with crew, and we'll head that way." So I understand some people who are defending Blake Lively will say that just because she gives him the go-ahead that one day to come into her trailer while she's breastfeeding doesn't mean that he had license to do it other times, or he didn't overstep the mark, or at times, make a presumptuous or uncomfortable entrance. Yeah, except there is something to the idea of like an attitudinal precedent being set, and people are not mind readers. And this isn't a male-female thing. I'm just saying I run across so many people who expect others to read their minds and moods and temperaments. And if someone, my experience with like friends of mine and mothers who are breastfeeding and so forth, if someone is showing a casual attitude like that, like, "Come on over, I'm pumping and we can chat," to me, the message that is being sent is that I have no issues with this breastfeeding stuff and you seeing it. In fact, maybe I'm even kind of like, I like to laugh at it, or I'd like to be a feminist and make you watch me suckle my child or whatever, right? How is he supposed to read your mind? So I just think stuff like that, very disingenuous. Again, if he's presenting the truth, which I think he is, not that everything he's claiming, I should say, I think in his lawsuit is the truth, but to me, the really damaging inconsistencies and allegations to the nature that I've just discussed, and there are more of them, they seem credible, and to me, they just really call Blake Lively's entire set of claims into questions. And to call her set of claims into question. Sorry, just looking at these. Okay, so let me go through his list of claims briefly here. All right. I've already talked about a couple of them. This is Baldoni's. Blake Lively, in her complaint, she depicts Baldoni and the producers of this set and Wayfarer as being initially really like complacent and dismissive of things like intimacy coordinators, and having this sort of I don't need any of that HR bullshit, this kind of attitude, and I do what I want, and we're just going to do things on the fly and whatever. She presents that image in her complaint, whereas Baldoni has presented text indicating that there were times in which Blake Lively refused to go to meetings with the intimacy coordinator that Baldoni attended, in which Baldoni wanted the two of them, with the coordinator, all of them, to figure out what they were going to be doing in these scenes. And she was like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to. And let me just say this, there are a lot of obligations that actors who are big movie star status or who are spoiled opt out of because they just don't want to do it or think that it doesn't apply to them. And they may be right in those instances, but you also find that with a number of these types of personalities, they don't think that they should have to do like the down and dirty work, no pun intended, but the really hard work of like hashing things out with an intimacy coordinator or what have you, or dealing with this director Baldoni that she may not like or already has an attitude about or whatever. But like the attitude that comes across with her is very like, Baldoni is wanting to get engaged and wanting to plan this stuff out and whatever. And she, at least in the text that he has selectively presented, again, she comes across as a completely different person. Now, am I saying that that's who she really is? The truth in a number of ways is probably in the middle. But this is what I meant when I said earlier that she had put herself in the position of the aggressor, because now she cannot complain about whatever is said about her or about the allegations, or as she might think, attacks that Baldoni and Wayfarer and Jamie Heath are making against her. She has no ground upon which to complain about that because she initiated this. And I know that she would have Blake Lively would have the public believe that she was the victim first of a smear campaign by Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer and Jamie Heath and their PR people. But I'm telling you that that's just not the case. And not only have they gone on record, whatever that's worth saying that, but they have supplied real-time text exchanges and conversations now indicating that. And I just don't believe, my experience of seeing this stuff play out for years and years, that crisis PR agents, even great ones, have the ability to create from whole cloth the kind of widespread and organic distaste for Blake Lively that was occurring on social media several months ago, as you know, which again, I don't and didn't support. But Blake Lively picked the wrong target, and she took the wrong course of action, and she made herself the aggressor. And now he's going to fight back, and he's going to be, I don't care if people don't like his shtick or his feminist bullshit or the fact that he did that 30-minute proposal video to his wife, put it on YouTube and stuff. Like, I get it. I understand that it seems narcissistic, it's annoying, what have you. But again, just because someone is not a perfect guy or he annoys some people doesn't mean that he deserves to have his entire life's work and decades of work and blood, sweat, and tears and all of that he's poured into this career, just have it stopped because an egotistical, overly sensitive actress was not able to deal with some of the more difficult adult dynamics on set. And I'm not even talking about sex there. I'm talking about, egos, clashing creative visions, and so forth. So I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. Now, I'm going to come back in a little while. We're going to finish this up. I think because I have more to say about that, and I was just about to get rolling, but I think I want to take a little break so that then I can just finish up. So when we come back, I want to talk about why I think this is significant and why I think it's not just, some stupid tabloid Perez Hilton type thing. And I want to talk about well, I'll figure it out. I've got it written here. Okay, back in 5 minutes, y'all, and I will look at comments when I come back. I was getting too much into the shadows there. That's the only thing about the way I have this positioned. This light, I have to remind myself, move forward. Okay. So yeah, AJ, I agree with you. The New York Times, I don't think, is respected by almost anyone really these days, but still somehow represents journalism and like the height of journalism to people still has a kind of a prestige to it too. At the same time, it's paradoxical. All right, so let me get to the point basically really fast here. Baldoni describes, and I can break this down more in a subsequent video because, again, this is going to be way too long anyway to get content for what I'm wanting. But Baldoni basically describes a kind of a not so nice takeover, almost a hostile takeover of the film creatively by Blake Lively, with her husband kind of in the wings as well, supporting her in various ways, subtle and definitely not subtle. And when I talk about creative differences or that she was taking control of the film, as he alleges, again, these are things that he backs up with receipts, as they say. But I'm not talking about not always, listening to his suggestions or demanding certain things. I mean, she did that, but I'm talking about she basically would not, it seems for a while, let him or the editor even see the film. She was working on her own cut of it. And apparently, Baldoni indicates that there were many, many important aspects of the making of this film, the planning of it, and the execution and decisions that were made that Blake basically just took over in a way that to me actually seems like she was the one creating a hostile and unfair work environment. And some of you have pointed this out on Twitter, that if the things that Baldoni alleges Blake Lively did professionally, or I should say unprofessionally, if she did those things, or if she even did some of them, then she engaged in really not just poor leadership. I mean, she engaged in a kind of a violation of his professional rights. And so it's interesting to see the text that Baldoni has presented of him reacting to this situation at the time. And he really comes across as a class act. And I understand that there are people who don't like him, or I understand that there are even some selected texts from his PR agents in which they talk about how, I think they use the term pompous he is, or something like that. Although now I don't really trust anything, knowing how texts are textualized and misrepresented by Blake Lively in the New York Times. But again, not having the context of that, we don't always know what that means. Someone can refer to someone as being basically pompous without indicating that they are someone with some kind of extreme, malevolent, malignant, narcissistic personality disorder or something, right? And so when you look at text in isolation, you can always read the worst into it. Oh, look, even his PR agents say that he's insufferable and that he's pompous or what have you. But that's also something that you could say, I'm sorry, about most actors and celebrities and most great artists. And it's something that I know it's hard to believe, but even yours truly has been accused of. So shocking, I know. How could anyone think that I come across as pompous, arrogant? I don't know. So what does that really even mean, And again, it's selectively put out there to make this man seem like he's some kind of male Amber Heard or something, or some really malevolent character. And I have to say also that after looking into him more and listening to some of his podcasts in their entirety, and even an episode that he did with his wife, I think that this guy is not some 100% charlatan who absolutely, like some charlatan preacher, doesn't believe anything that he's saying, and it's just a whole narcissistic scam, and he's just this hollow at the core person. Basically, that's what Amber Heard did, right? She took on the role of the victim and the activist and everything, when in fact there was just like hollowness or evil at the core. I don't know, but that's not the feeling that I'm getting now about this guy. And while I still find him in a number of ways annoying and overdone and whatever word you want to use, somewhat narcissistic, perhaps in some lighter way, I also think that there actually is something genuine. It could be genuinely misguided, but genuine going on here too, with the focus that he's had for years and years on masculinity. And so I don't think that he is this horrible guy that Blake Lively has tried to depict him as being. And I think that the truth probably is, again, that you have these two creative people with this passion project, a project that's a passion for both of them, and they're both wanting to be taken seriously. She as a producer and what a writer, him as like basically a first-time director. I know he's directed other stuff, but this is like his first big feature film, Hollywood film. And so there's tension and there's a difference in styles. Blake Lively alleged also that he would harass her by talking about his former pornography addiction. And in fact, I think she does not mention that this went on a lot, but maybe she cites one conversation, so who knows really. But she was very put off by this, and she presents it in her complaint as a kind of a sexual harassment. But when I looked at Justin Baldoni's body of work, no pun intended, pornography addiction seems to be a real pillar of his message to men and about masculinity and about something unhealthy that needs to be let go of. And it's not like some wallowing in this lurid addiction or whatever. And so I just have to ask once again, is Blake Lively presenting things properly when she makes it seem like, in discussing his pornography addiction, that he is that he's harassing her? And honestly, y'all, the most disturbing allegation probably that Blake Lively makes in her complaint, and that's repeated in the New York Times, is the allegation that on one occasion, Baldoni, in a larger discussion of consent and I guess issues with consent and maybe gray areas, I don't know the conversation exactly, but a conversation about consent, which sounds like it was a pretty like philosophical, real one, that Baldoni said something sort of flippant like, did I always, was I always, as considerate as I might have been, did I always get consent? Something else, something like that. He was like, maybe not. And the way that it's presented in her complaint is that basically he was more or less admitting that he had assaulted someone, sexually assaulted or raped somebody, basically. In that, the way she presents it, the wording, it seems to be a confession that he had overridden consent. I always listen when they say no, something to that effect. I'll splice the actual thing in here. But that was the most serious allegation she made. But again, it's her wording of things. And if she was already uncomfortable with the situation, it sounds like Blake Lively was very uncomfortable with anything sexual being discussed by, or the way in which it was being discussed by Baldoni and by others on set. And that could be because they were being genuinely inappropriate and lascivious in the way they were discussing these things. Or it could be that she had a chip on her shoulder, like she did about the belly bump thing with the other lady, and a big ego, and is also creatively clashing with this guy and really just wants to be in control and have her vision out there. I mean, I can just see this could be like a perfect storm that would come about, but that doesn't indicate necessarily that he's an abuser. And so you might say, well, you don't know. Yeah. And this is what we always get back to, y'all. Presumption of innocence. Duh. I mean, duh. I almost get kind of angry that some of you, not those of you in my audience maybe right now, but that some of you on the audience, you're still such dumb shits. I'm sorry, but you're still such dumb shits, some of you, when it comes to the presumption of innocence and the need for it. It's like Groundhog Day every time. But you don't know for sure. How do you know? Are you 100%? How do you just side with me? Stupid. No, I side with the presumption of innocence until and unless we reach a point where there is good evidence of something or good indications of something. So tired of having the same fucking conversation with some of you, dialogue with some of you over and over. Probably no one here tonight. So, bottom line, I don't know what kind of a person Justin Baldoni is, and I don't know what kind of a person Blake Lively is, and there's certainly positive and negative indications about both of them when we look at their long history of interviews and so forth. But she basically fucking canceled this guy, and she had not been canceled. And even if she had been canceled, it wasn't this guy that did it, and it wasn't his PR people. Because what's also very clear in the evidence that Baldoni has presented is that they were very much, he and his PR people were very much in a kind of a defensive position in which they felt like he was already being maligned or being set up to be blamed by Blake and her people, or was being shut out in various ways of doing the PR. You know, if you refuse, Blake Lively, to do certain PR events or to stand with the director at the premiere or whatever, then yes, it's going to get people talking, and then it's going to become some kind of he said, she said, or who's the problem here? And then, you know what? Guess what? You bring out a weapon like that, it might turn on you. And so Blake Lively has created this situation. She's put herself now in the aggressor position. And I believe that her claims have been, to some degree or other, significantly impacted, or I should say significantly invalidated. And so I don't think he should be canceled. But that's the thing that she set in motion. And she might claim to others or to herself that she just wanted people to be aware of this stuff, or she just wanted to strike a blow for feminism in Hollywood or whatever, and that she wasn't trying to get the guy canceled. But that's fucking what happened. What has happened up to this point. You, meanwhile, Blake Lively, were not canceled. You were raking in hundreds of millions of dollars from the success of that movie that you were attached to at the head, producer, star, serious actress. Well, it's a shitty film, but serious actress. And you just like destroyed all of it. It's very interesting. Very interesting that what ego can do. And I'm not saying that Baldoni doesn't have ego or what have, but I'm just saying that Blake Lively fucked up, I think. And people are going to come to that conclusion. And you're going to see a whole bunch of negativity once again coalescing around this idea of Blake Lively as this manipulative, spoiled Hollywood mean girl. And Blake Lively, let me also say, it doesn't look good when you have to drag your husband into things to fight your battles for you. And you had a lame ass explanation, Blake Lively, in your complaint where you tried to explain why you had all hands on deck or whatever meeting, or why you had this super important professional meeting to talk about all the ways Justin Baldoni was fucking up, or Wayfair was fucking up, and how you need to be better protected in all of this. You're going to be this strong feminist woman, and then you're dragging your husband in there, or maybe he was raring to go, but you're bringing your husband, Mr. Deadpool, in there to save the day, metaphorically. And Baldoni claims that Ryan Reynolds became so enraged at one point when Baldoni would not agree to Blake Lively's interpretation of things, which he felt, you can read it in the lawsuit, which he felt was inaccurate, profoundly inaccurate. And Ryan Reynolds was basically trying to browbeat him metaphorically into bending the knee and saying, oh, yes, you're right. I am bad guy. I did do that. He wouldn't do it. And Ryan Reynolds, Baldoni alleges, exploded. Now, again, might that be inaccurate reporting? Sure. But it paints a picture that I think is very compelling of what's going on here with the situation. And Blake Lively bringing her husband, and she admitted this, bringing her husband as her representative, or her, what do they call it when you bring someone support? Bringing her husband as her witness or her agent, so to speak, in this meeting. She claims that she did it because, why does she claim she did it? It was a stupid reason. I'm trying to remember. She claims that, I mean, I know also, he's involved in the film, right, as a producer. Let me look this up for a second. We're almost done, but was Ryan Reynolds a producer for It Ends With Us? No, he was not. Okay. So so this makes sense then, what I'm trying to say. Scratch the last 30 seconds. Let me say this. So Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively's husband, Mr. Deadpool, who Baldoni claims went off on him in a way that was unprofessional and perhaps even shocking. And Baldoni claims someone who was present said that it was the most unprofessional display that he'd ever seen in Hollywood. But he was not a producer on that film. He had no official function on that film. Now, it turns out Blake Lively let him, unbeknownst to Justin Baldoni, rewrite a key scene or something like that. But whatever, it's just the normal thing that people do. It's like, bring your husband to work day. When I go in my waitressing job, sometimes I like to bring my guy with me, and I'm like, here, why don't you serve this table for a little while, and I'm gonna chill out. Anyways, so he had no function there. He had no reason to be there. I understand that in these kinds of proceedings, people like to, it's standard practice to have someone there in your corner a witness, whatever you want to call it, witness, representative, advocate. That's it, to have an advocate in your corner. And yes, she was within her rights to choose Ryan Reynolds, but come on, come on. This big feminist, and proudly wears, the strong independent label, and I'm a producer in my own right. I'm a woman. I'm a smart person. I'm a capable person. I'm a talented person. Apart from my husband, I'm not just Mrs. Ryan Reynolds, except when I want to be Mrs. Ryan Reynolds and I want to bring Daddy in to basically rough up this guy who's been bothering me on the playground. He said a bad word, Daddy. He said a bad word. He said I was fat, Daddy. Which is a whole other thing that I think Justin Baldoni, at least to some degree, is able to invalidate. This is another claim that Blake Lively made, which is that she was basically fat shamed by Baldoni, and that he manipulated her basically into getting a trainer or something so that she would slim down. I'll have to go back and look. I'm more fuzzy on that one. But he has a whole other side to that story. And again, one that makes her look really bad. So I don't know. I'm open to the fact that Baldoni may still be in the wrong when all this gets hashed out. But again, my allegiance is always going to be to the presumption of innocence unless I'm shown something otherwise that's compelling. And not only has Blake Lively not given us anything compelling, but her ship has some big holes now that have been poked into it, and it's taking on water fast. And so we'll see. I'm not impressed by her lawsuit that she filed today. It's a rehashing of what seems to be a lot of bullshit, but maybe not. We'll see. Now, final thing. It's interesting too, actually, how many of the text and conversations that Baldoni discusses or presents in his lawsuit revolve around this idea of how to handle Blake just blatantly taking over the film and excluding everyone else creatively from it. And so that to me is one of the more compelling aspects of his suit as well, even apart from the sexual harassment allegations or his repudiation of those, just to get a real sense of how stressed out he was and what a kind of a nightmare he felt like he was in, but how he kept trying to be classy and positive. And if you look at his lawsuit, some of the texts that he includes are situations where he's talking to his PR people and he's actually saying, well, I don't really think that we don't need to, we're okay. We don't need to fight her. Like, I'm okay with, we have a great movie. It doesn't really matter, how it came about or whatever. And I'm going to try to be happy and proud. And she deserves her moment in the sun or whatever. Like, he's actually, you can see, trying to be extremely calm and conciliatory. And again, selective text. And maybe there were other texts in which he was like, fuck that bitch. I mean, those have not been presented, but I understand. But I'm just saying that this thing, it is called Blake Lively's claims in the New York Times piece. It is called their credibility, I would say, not just into question, but at this point, it may be a fatal wound. It may be. And the New York Times and Blake Lively certainly seemed to have altered a text exchange in a number of ways, and at the very least presented it in a way that was not faithful, was completely 100-degree 80 turn from what was clearly the real meaning of that. And once somebody does shit like that, I've just lost all trust or faith in them and all sympathy. So Blake Lively, you made a huge mistake in strategy, and you went after a target that you didn't need to go after. And now you put yourself in the position of being the unsympathetic aggressor. And you've given him a legitimate victim status if he chooses to play that card that way. So everybody, I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you, AJ, my mod, and thank you for the few comments that you gave me, because it's nice to know people are just watching. But thank you for being here. 16 of you made it. And And I just want to say that there's a whole long list, actually, of claims that both Blake Lively and Baldoni made in their competing lawsuits. So, no one's hiding anything. I'm not hiding anything or trying to misrepresent anything. Very easy to look it up. Read the lawsuits. If you Google, read Justin Baldoni lawsuit, read Blake Lively complaint. You can find it. You can find it on my page. So look at it. There's a ton of stuff I haven't even covered. And maybe in another video, if people want, then we'll get into the nitty gritty of it, of the allegations and my feelings about them. But this is where we are at. And yeah, Amber Heard, she picked an interesting case to weigh in on. I'll say that. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. If I could turn it off. Oh no, we'll never get out. I lost my cursor. I'm using 2 monitors here, and so sometimes I lose it. Oh, there we go. It's weird. I could just turn off the other monitor, I guess. Let's see. All right. Bye.